1st, 2011. Please. Vibrate. If you need to talk. 2002.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Yeah. Now it works.
Maybe I'll just.
Being evicted? You're being evicted?
My mic isn't working.
Sit up here.
What's up?
All right, I'll just start again. Good evening. The Design Review Board 1 public meeting of April 22nd, 2011 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speakers cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be renoticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call. Mr. Aliano.
Present.
Mr. Insua.
Here.
Ms. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Simonian is absent, and Mr. Yu.
Here.
Report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on April 14, 2011. Oral communications. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on an item not a part of this agenda? No. Do you have any cards by any chance? Okay. Then we will move on to our review calendar. Staff at this point doesn't have any announcements. There is nothing on the consent calendar, so we'll go down to our regular calendar. We have 2 items. Thanks.
Okay, welcome to Design Review Board 1. The first item is 3250 Park Vista. Can I get those speaker cards we have for that?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We just have one speaker card for that? Okay.
We're going to turn in a few.
That's for the other agenda item. Yeah.
Is that for the Park Vista project?
No, it isn't. It's for the other
Okay.
agenda item.
Okay. In that case, the case planner, Milka, can you give us a little breakdown on this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This first item before you, as you stated, is located at 3250 Park Vista Drive. Is located in the northern part of Glendale, close to La Crescenta. The property is currently developed with a single-family house, and it was constructed in 1954. The one-story house is 1,678 square feet, and the proposal involves remodeling the exterior, introducing a new design, adding 254 square feet at the northeast side of the house, and constructing a new 625 square foot second-story addition. The footprint of the second story will primarily be centered above the first floor and extend towards the rear. The total proposed floor area with the addition will be 2,557 square feet. In addition, a new 174 square foot covered front porch is proposed as part of the exterior facade remodel. Presently, there is a 393 square foot attached garage which will remain, and in order to comply with the minimum 5-foot interior setback requirements, the proposal involves clipping some corners approximately 6 inches at the northeast corner of the garage and 12 inches at the southeast corner of the house. This area is zoned R1 residential, R1 low-density residential, floor ratio District 2. On the site, there is a mature sycamore tree at the front of the lot, and there is a mature oak tree on the adjacent lot to the north. They will be required to meet with our urban forester or may be required indigenous tree mitigation measures just to make sure that the trees are protected and complied with in accordance with our indigenous tree ordinance. As I stated, the property is located in North Glendale, and actually specifically in the Del Norte neighborhood, which is characterized by 1940s, 1950s neighborhood in the guidelines. It describes the neighborhood as non-significant, however, in terms of its architectural style. However, in this particular area, our immediate street block, we can see ranch-style homes, some traditional-style homes, and a more recently remodeled homes. The homes in the neighborhood are typically small. They're 1 story in height. However, again, in this area, there are 2 partial 2-story homes along Park Vista Drive. So again, the proposal will be in keeping with the mass and the number of stories in the neighborhood. In terms of site planning, the addition is appropriately located on the site. The existing site conditions will be maintained and is therefore consistent with the general neighborhood pattern. What I'll do at this point is approach the board just to highlight where the addition will take place. It's pretty straightforward, but just so that the public is aware. So again, the second floor will actually be, like I stated earlier, centered in the existing location, the main footprint of the existing first floor. And this is where the addition to the first floor would be, which basically involves an extension of the master bedroom and then new master bath. And it wraps around the corner. This is the existing garage, and it wraps around this way. And this is the existing 18-inch sycamore tree. Is there any question?
Okay, if there's no questions from, okay, then
Wrapping
you
up
will
my-
continue.
Unless there are any questions about the report, I could end here. Or in terms of mass and scale, again, the overall mass and scale of the building will change. However, the addition on the first floor and these second floors are modest and will adequately fit with the existing site and the floor plan conditions. The new front setback to the front porch will be 37 feet 8 inches, and the height of the building will increase to 22 feet 6 inches. Again, the second floor will be stepped back from the sides, and then overall the project's mass and scale will be in keeping with the neighborhood. In terms of the building design and detailing, the existing ranch-style design will be modified to a craftsman-influenced design. The proposal features 2 front gables, a full-width front porch, wood-like hardy board posts with stone pedestal at the front porch, wood-like windows and trim, and a sill underneath, wood brackets, eaves, and gables, which are in keeping with this style. The existing vertical siding on the house will be removed and replaced with stucco, and that will match throughout. And the existing stone veneer will be replaced with a similar stone, which will also be applied at the front facade. In terms of the fenestration, they are proposing new fiberglass windows on the addition to match, again, the style of the existing windows at the front of the house, with the exception that some existing windows will be modified by incorporating plantons, grids. The style of the new windows include casement and one slider. And again, the existing window detail on the front windows will include window trim and sill color, which are proposed to match the new windows. Overall, the design and details appear to be a good fit for the neighborhood. There was some comments that staff noted in the report in some recommendations, for example, remove the middle column at the front porch, and reduce the roof pitch at the second floor. And while the applicant has reduced the size of the window above the porch approximately 4 inches, staff suggests additional reduction to its size. And in addition, another comment would be to eliminate the portion of the addition, which would be the master bath, which overlaps the garage at the north elevation in order to create a smoother transition. But overall, the addition and materials do complement the style of the house, and as a result, the house, the remodel, the addition are all well proportioned and they complement each other. Staff does recommend that the board approve the project because it is compatible with the design guidelines and the overall neighborhood context. Again, some of the comments that staff noted in the report for the board to consider was to basically that the items that I just mentioned in the design and architectural section of the report, to also submit a landscape plan with drought-tolerant planting at the front and rear of the house, and to clearly identify the trash area location on the site plan. And that concludes staff presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions?
Oh, before I finish, I just remembered, there are some letters that were received. One of them from the HOA, Montrose Verdugo City Spar Height Neighborhood Association, and a neighbor located adjacent to the property, I believe on the south side at 3248 Park Vista, and they're concerned. Her name is Susan. Her main concern was that there are 3 windows, I believe, on the southeast view on the second floor, which would face their property, because the subject property is slightly higher in elevation compared to theirs, so it's more of a privacy issue. She did speak to me on the phone, so she wanted me to make sure in addition to the letter, I brought this up because that is a concern for her. I believe she's already, as stated in the letter, she did speak to the property owner, and based on the letter, it seemed to be something they worked out, but again, I just wanted to bring it up to the board, so in case they wanted to comment on this topic and have the applicant address it.
No questions? Let's call Mr. Garagos. Your name and address, please.
Mike Aragus, 3501 Buena Vista, Glendale. Welcome. Thank you for making quorum. Had to get that. It's a rather modest addition to a existing single-family residence. It has sort of a strong north-south ridge, a very low-pitch roof. Not much features to the existing house. What I try to do in situations like this is express the second floor in a manner that would be in keeping with what it might have been if it had been two-story originally. And I tend to like to put the second-story portion towards the front because I think that's traditionally how two stories are done. They're showing the two-story face and that the mass comes towards the front. I also like to do a story and a half idea, which is what's happening here, where the second floor is tucked up into the attic space, which helps to minimize the massing of the addition, so you don't have a second floor plate line and then a roof above that, adding to the mass and size of it in relation to other what might be single-story houses adjacent. It's sort of a craftsman or bungalow style. It's not relying on additional variation in siding. It's really sort of a stuccoed bungalow feel, but there are some outriggers that work onto the fascia pieces where we're doing it, but we will do window surrounds, which would be in a hardy material. The windows, there's some existing windows which were redone previously that we are legalizing with this permit and this review. Those were done as vinyl, and we're going to be adding grids to them in order to match the style that's on the elevation. Any additional new ones would be fiberglass and would be adding grids to them. So that is our intent on that. In terms of items, on the 6 items that show up in the recommendations, the trash area would be on that same side that the master bedroom extension is on. It's where they are currently. It's a paved area on the side back, and it's because of the gate there, it's really not seen at all. Removing the middle column of the front porch, we're sort of mixing metaphors. We're on the fence about removing the porch roof. So we could go either way. If you want to make a recommendation, we could be flexible in terms of hearing your opinions on that. Reduce the front pitch to the second floor in front of the house. It's a little difficult to reduce the pitch because we're tucking the second floor into the attic space. So by reducing the pitch, you actually don't lower the ridge. You'd have to maintain the ridge in order to still have the second floor, and then it just brings up the lower walls. It doesn't actually lower the ridge, so it doesn't help us, or what would be the intent. Reduce the size of the window above the porch. If you wanted to have that as a recommendation, I could work on that. It's going to be an egress issue out of the bedroom, so we could work on a window that would be legal.
And it's that upper window up there is what's being discussed? Okay.
Right, the second floor window. It is the egress window for the front and back bedroom, so we would need to conform to egress on those. Submit a landscape plan. What I would hope the board would do is acknowledge the fact that, I don't know if you have seen it or not, but the whole back has been redone, and the front is simple but done. And any issues that might come up because of the addition would be the front porch and then access to the porch. So in my mind, the only area that's really changing in any material sense is that front area getting to the porch. So if you were to require a landscape plan, I'm hoping that you focus it as much as possible so that our communication with staff would be clear in terms of exactly what we're trying to do, not the whole site. I think the whole site is unrealistic for what we're actually modifying on site. Also, I think if it is sort of the board's pleasure that it's about accessing that front porch, then it's really a hardscape issue, which I don't know that it has to be a licensed landscape architect in order to handle the hardscape or little plantings for that pathway.
Residential plans, if I remember correctly, do not require a licensed architect. All they need to be done is professionally. You don't need, for residential projects, a licensed landscape architect. It's done well. That's
an important moniker that had come up in the past, whether it was licensed or not. So if you could address that, that would be great. That would be great. The one angled portion of the master bath, that's just, you're trying to make a bathroom that has certain features in it, and you need that extra little bit of space. I'll tell you, it's 80 feet back from the curb. It's down a 5-foot setback behind a gate with a 6-foot fence on the side, and no one is going to see that. And I think to square it off or lose it, I think is that if, as you've done plans, that's 20 or 30 square feet that is not going to hurt anybody, makes a big difference in terms of what's happening in the master bath. So I really hope we can keep that slight side portion. I'll finish up. We've took the effort of contacting all the adjacent neighbors across the street with the plan, site plan, floor plans, all of which had signed in support. And to address the one issue on the letter, the one neighbor to the south, we've met with them as with all the neighbors and agreed to that the window that is directly south on the second floor at the landing, they agreed that the lower portions of that window would be frosted. So, and that was just an effort to review with staff. If you have any questions?
Any questions?
just have a quick question.
So, I'm sorry. So this is the window that's being requested to be reduced?
No, if it's
That's the west one.
The west,
South?
it's a south elevation.
Left.
south elevation?
Right, the bottom one.
It's that one, exactly that one, yeah.
It's not all three. It's just one, not all three.
Not all three, just the one that's the landing. Yeah, not the one on the left.
Just this one?
That one, yes, just that one, yeah.
What did you foresee the I guess the roof rafter sizes being? They look kind of small on here.
They would be a 2-by. It's not in a fire zone 4, so they wouldn't have to be sized up.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want to show a 2x8 that's a 2-by. A lot of times that style would be a 2x6 or a 2x4. We've done it where we trim the rafter just on the tail, so the tail shows as a 2x4. Again, trying to give it a lighter feel as it would have been originally in that style.
The big piece though on the second floor, right?
Is which? I'm sorry.
Pretty long piece. I mean,
The fascia? Or the actual fascia?
Yeah, along with your roof rafters, I guess.
Yeah, the fascia traditionally is larger than the roof rafter, so it could be a 2x6 or 2x8. And then the tails could be like I said, we could trim the tail to be a 2x4, which is in keeping with the style.
I'm still a little, so it's this window, these
Yes.
windows, which are basically these windows here?
Yes, yes.
That's what's being requested to be reduced?
No, to be frosted.
Frosted.
That's the neighbor, the southern neighbor requested that as being frosted.
Okay,
The two are the front and back, which is over the front porch,
okay, right
over
here.
the front porch, and then if you go all the way up, that one, yes,
So
they're
these two are
matching.
being requested to be,
And I don't mind making them smaller. I think what happens, especially on the rear, I think as it gets smaller, it tends to look a little funnier with the wall section. But
if you study that, I mean, you could probably make the lights, these a little small, and still keep that as a,
yeah, and egress would just be the issue on that. Make sure we had
the
egress.
middle one has to be, the
Right.
but these guys can be small.
Mhm.
But if you study it, you don't like the way it looks.
I'm not clear on the windows. These are exterior grids that are going to be applied?
We're going to apply them to the existing windows in order to match our elevation. Any new windows would also have grids, would have the external and the internal grid. Yeah.
Any other questions? I don't have any other speaker cards, so we'll close the public session. And Mr. Insua.
Sure. I think overall it's done well. I did have a couple questions that were explained by Mr. Garagos concerning the windows, and one of them, the windows, the size, egress, landscape plan. Again, it doesn't have to be by licensed landscape architect. It can just be done professionally. I'm supporting the argument with respect to not having to do the rear yard. It's not seen, it's existing, and it's well-maintained. Just the front yard, have that done. I'm supporting that. The 3 columns in the front, I think it's a matter of taste. You can do 2, you can do 3, you can do 4. He's chosen to do 3, and the homeowners are comfortable with it. I have no problem with that. And then the aligning or reducing the pitch of the roof, as he explained, the peak would stay the same, and you'd have to build up those walls. And for me, when I see the nice proportions that are being achieved here to reduce this pitch, this would have to go higher. There's conflicts there, and I like that lower, softer pitch with this design. So those 2 different changes of the front elevation, which would be the east elevation, where the pitch is more extreme on the second floor as above to the porch, I think it looks pretty interesting. And again, you never see a house like a drawing. It's always moving. You see it from a different perspective, and all in all, I think it's okay. So I'm comfortable with all the stuff, and again, staff is supporting it, so my overall thank you.
Okay. Mr. Yu?
I think the same way. I think it's well done. Like you said, it's sort of a, changing a little bit on it, but adding a whole second floor to it to be able to use that as a suite up there. I'm okay with, like you said, the columns, 2 or 3. I think it's up to you. I'm okay with either. The roof pitch, bring it out. I think there's a certain interest to having 2 different pitches in the front, and especially if you bring it up, then you increase the massing of the face that you see on the second floor. So this proportion works a lot better. All the other things I agree with. I think it's still kind of strange that the house is kind of just being sliced off one end of it to bring it within the 5 feet. That's
Not a preference.
I know. And I guess the only thing is I think the windows could get a little bit smaller up at the top. It is kind of just going out to the edges, and once you start building it, you know that it's not going to be able to be that big anyway with all the members that are behind there. So getting it slightly smaller, giving a little space around the window in the face, I think that makes sense. But besides that, I think it's well done, and I would support it.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes, I'm in agreement. I support the project as well. I think in response to the staff recommendations, which are really good observations, but after listening to your arguments, I have to kind of respect your arguments because you made some very good ones. I thought, obviously number one, you can solve that with the trash. The column, I think that should be a consideration. If you feel 3 works better, you should keep 3. Number 3, reducing the pitch, I think your argument was very strong, and I agree with you. I think once you reduce it, then you end up with a higher plate line, and it gets a little bit more. Plus, these kinds of buildings look better when everything kind of looks like it's sort of molded together rather than very, strong lines. So number 3, I'm not in agreement with. Number 4, the size of the window, I think Mr. Yu made a good point. If you could study it to see because it does look kind of strange when it touches the eaves. If you could bring it even just a few inches, just so that things don't touch, you may have to reduce the middle one a couple of inches or 4 inches, and then reduce. But again, I'll leave it up to you. Just study it, and if you feel you can make it work, I think that's fine with me. And the landscaping, I think. We'll see what you have to say, but I agree. I think if most of the landscaping is already done, and we're just dealing with the affected area, the front, then I think we should focus on that. And number 6, what are my notes on number 6? Oh, this is the elimination of that portion of the building. I don't want to make you do that. You studied it enough, and if you feel that you can make it work. And when you look at the drawings, again, it's in the rear side. Don't really have a big concern. I think this is a very nicely massed house. So I think in the end, it's gonna work. So I'll support it. And again, those are these comments. I think the one that I would sort of stress would be to really consider revisiting the window size, and then the rest, I think I've already made my comments on record.
I agree with the comments about narrowing the windows down there. Regarding the columns, I think where I was having a problem with the pitch of the roof, and I know you can't raise that, it's going to interfere with the windows, that center column, in my view, and I'm just looking at the plan, or the elevation, it focuses on the height of that second pitch, so because it's right in line with it, and it makes you look up. So I think that's where if you take that out, it doesn't look as bad in reality. I agree with the other comments. Regarding the landscaping, I would like to see a plan of the front. You're not just going to be working in the front entry. It's going to be all over. And I think this house is going to look very nice, and that if you enhance the hardscape and the landscaping, it's just going to complement it more. So, and it does not have to be done by a licensed landscape architect. So that would be my comments. Any other questions or comments?
Can we have a little discussion about the columns, because I can see why there's a column in the middle. Maybe it feels like it's too big of a span, and visually it might look like, that cross beam looks like it might be sagging in the middle. But I don't know if you've studied doing double columns at the end. Yeah, I think you can study and see and maybe work with staff, but it's one of those things
You
I
might
need.
have to increase the size of the...
No, I wasn't
beam or
thinking
anything?
structurally. I was thinking visually. Once you remove that first column, the beam might visually start to feel like it's sagging in the middle, even though structurally it will never sag.
if it looked larger, would that eliminate that?
It looks.
If the beam looked taller,
Oh,
it might look...
yeah. He'd have to study it, because you could consider maybe double columns at the end rather than one. Just that way you narrow the span a little bit more, so visually now you don't have such a long span. I think those are all things that can be on the table and you can look at. But I would defer to you on that one. I think you have a very good sense of what this house should look like, and I don't want to interfere with the details because I think you have a pretty good handle on that.
Can we have what your comments are, Milka?
Yeah, I have to submit a landscape plan, professional landscape plan for the entire front only, to incorporate, again, planting and hardscape that enhances the design. Reduce the size of the second floor windows so that they don't touch the eaves. Perhaps
Clarify those elevations, just so.
Okay, that would be actually the front, which I can't see from.
East.
So it would be the east
And
and the, I believe also the west.
Yeah.
Okay. By a couple inches, and that is a requirement, not a consideration. And this last comment by Board Member Aliano to consider introducing double columns at the end, for the end columns at the front porch.
To compensate for the elimination of the one
I
central
think we make it a consideration, too.
consideration.
So
yeah.
consider
Review that.
eliminating
Eliminating
the
and
middle
reviewing.
column and then introducing double column at the end to compensate.
Just to,
5 total. It's okay.
Okay.
so,
Just kidding.
Well, I did hear at one point that the number didn't really matter. It's just that it looked good.
You're like a
We want him to look at it.
but it's a consideration. It's something that they need to study if you feel you can make it work.
That's all I have. Oh, do we still want to keep the comment about the trash, although he's made reference to where it
I don't
is?
have an issue with it.
Just to clearly identify it on the plan. And also, did you, since there was a letter submitted regarding having the one window at the stair landing frosted, I think it would probably be better to have the board, if they feel it's appropriate, condition that so that we have something documented and then we actually make sure to look for it out in the field.
But the applicant has agreed to do that.
Right,
So-
but we would still need to have it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we should have it.
So
in
make
there.
that a condition.
Okay, and that would, again, be just, I think it's just the one window at the land, not all three.
Okay.
And that would be the south elevation.
That'd be Windows 16.
Windows 16, thank you. Just the lower portion to be frosted or obscured of some sort.
Sheet A2.
Oh, and also she didn't want to have, I'm sorry, in the letter she mentioned she didn't want it to have one of those in the future removable. She wanted a permanent glass.
Fixed.
Actual
Fixed.
frosted glass, not a,
Okay.
an application.
Not a pure
Exactly, not an application. So I'll specify that. She was very thorough when we spoke on the phone, so.
Any other comments? I think we,
I'm sorry?
Clarify that 6 is not.
Number 6, you mean? Oh,
Item 6.
Comments.
item
Yeah.
6?
Item 6 is not included.
Yeah, no, that's not part of it. No, we only mentioned, again, the trash area. Again, just to reiterate, the landscape plan for the front, the elimination, consider eliminating the middle column and then compensating by introducing double columns at the end, for the end columns, and the window number 16 to be frosted glass on the lower portion. That's it. Okay.
have a proposal?
I move for approval with the comments stated.
I'll second.
Okay, that was a motion by Board Member Aliano and a second by Board Member Yu, and that would be actually approved with conditions.
There's
Board-
only one condition. That was the window reduction. The other ones were just,
No, because the last one regarding the frosted glass,
okay, right.
And
right.
the landscape plan for
And
the
that's
front
three.
is also a condition. That's what I have. It could be,
Right.
that's what I have as well.
Again,
and,
it just professionally done, only in the front.
right.
Yeah,
But it is a condition.
Yeah, so we have 3. Okay.
correct. So approved with conditions. Board Member Aliano?
Yes.
Board Member Yu?
Yes.
Board Member Insua?
Yep.
Chairperson Palmer?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
you ready?
We're ready?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. The next project before you with the case number 1 PDR 2011-001 located at 500 East Lexington Drive consists of facade renovation to an existing multifamily residential building which contains 38 condominiums and is located in the R1250 high-density residential zone. The renovation includes replacing the existing siding with the stucco and the facade of the building. Currently, the building walls are finished in stucco and siding. The building was constructed in 1986. According to the city's historic preservation planner, the existing structure would not be considered an historic resource under CEQA and do not appear to be eligible for listing on the Glendale Register. The building the project is surrounded by multi-story, multifamily residential buildings, and it is wrapped on three sides by Lexington Drive to the north, Jackson Street to the west, and an alley to the east. The neighborhood contains single-family homes to the north of the subject site across Lexington Drive. The site is a rectangular-shaped corner lot located at the southeast corner of Jackson Street and Lexington Drive. A subterranean parking garage provides 72 parking stalls, and 4 on-grade parking stalls are located in the northern portion of the site adjacent to an alley. The proposed project will not change the site plan. The existing landscaping will remain intact. The residential building is a 3-story building and fits in the context of the neighborhood where a number of buildings are of a similar height and composed of similar materials. On each elevation, pointed parapet appearing as gable ends on top of strategically located vertical elements provide means of breaking the building mass. The repetitive use of these gable walls has created a pattern throughout the building. This pattern consists of 3 vertical panels, with the middle panel finished in stucco and the panels on either side covered by siding. Currently, the siding is painted the same color as the adjacent stucco walls, and massing is somewhat minimized through the change of material, which should be maintained. The overall mass and architectural style of the building will remain unchanged. The choice of altering the paint colors for areas now in siding and stucco areas increases the perception of variety on building elevations. Maintaining the siding on the building, however, will further modulate building elevations and is suggested as a condition of approval. Staff recommends that the existing siding should be maintained or replaced with a hardy plank or other siding material to provide a more effective method of creating breaks in the building facade. Colors should also be considered to distinguish between the siding and stucco throughout the building. This concludes my presentation. If there is any question, I'm here to answer.
Do you have any existing pictures?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, if there's no questions, we'll go to the public. I have 4 speaker cards. I don't know if the architect or the owner wants to speak first. Are you the architect or the owner? Pardon me? Okay. Whoever wants to speak first, you come up, just give us your name and your address.
Good afternoon. My name is Leonard Davidian. I live at 500 East Lexington Drive, corner of Jackson and Lexington Drive. The reason we are, first of all, before I start, I want to make some minor correction here, that I'm not the owner of the entire building. just owner of just one unit. I'm here to represent Park Lexington Homeowners Association, which is 38-unit condo. And our architect, Mr. John Harapetian, is out of town. His assistant and colleague, Mr. Neil Ponsky from Visual Graphic Design, who did the artwork, he's here. He can answer your questions. The reason we want to change our wood siding with stucco, the reason, first important factor is the cost. There's a big difference between the cost of the siding, either hardy plank or wood siding or vinyl, compared to stucco. The second reason is the finish. What we have here is a tongue and groove type wood siding. They are kind of flat finish, is not overlapping. And hardy planks, they don't come in tongue and groove type. They're usually 8 1/4 by 12 feet long, and they are not tongue and groove. They have to be overlapping. The other type of the hardy planks which come in the sheets, 4 feet by 8 feet sheets, they are not also tongue and groove. There are lap joints, or they're not even what they call ship laps. Not even that. It's just they're butt joints and they're filled with sealant, silicone or whatever, and they are kind of brittle too, compared to solid stucco. So if you put the hardy plank there, overlapping type, the edge is going to create some kind of problem. It's going to create some kind of sawtooth type of edge. What we have now is kind of flat, same level with the existing stucco, which is, as I said, is tongue and groove. It's not overlapping. And the third reason we want to have stucco is the maintenance thing. As I said, the hardy planks are brittle. If somebody hits something like a ball or something, it's going to crack. Is it hard to change one? It does. It's hard to change one in the middle. Just like what we have right now, it's very difficult to change one piece of tongue and groove type plank right at the middle. It's very difficult to pull it out and put it back. So we have to start from the bottom and go all the way up. I think stucco of different texture and color is going to be a very good match there. Maintenance-free, long-lasting. The cost is much lower, probably 1/3 of the planks. And I think it's going to match with the existing neighborhood, because our neighbors, they don't have hardy planks. I mean, wood siding or anything like that. Not even hardy planks. They're mostly stucco. I think I sent you an email before I filed this project last November, but I didn't receive an answer from you. It was a long time ago. I sent a picture of all the neighborhood buildings compared to us. Ours has wood siding, theirs doesn't have any. Theirs are just stucco. So I think if ours, we change it to stucco, it's going to be a very good match in harmony with the rest of the neighborhood. Not a big difference. Especially if we change the color and texture. It's going to be a very good match in my opinion. If you have questions, probably can ask Mr. Ponsky.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ponsky, just your name and address for the record.
Name is Neil Ponsky. I'm an associate architect, and my address is 17200 Ventura Boulevard, Suite 118 in Encino, California, 91316. Problem with this building, when we started with the building, was that there was dry rot, there was leaking problems in the building, which is structural from the building because of the age of the dwelling. The property had severe dry rot problems, as well as there was a problem where we were starting to get termite problems in the building, which was cleaned. But now the solution is that we took the serenity of the neighborhood, looked at the other buildings that are on south or just south of on Jackson, which is exactly almost in shapes the same as this building, and we try to use the same sort of colors. The building hasn't been painted probably within the last 20 years, and it's due for a major change in color and paint. And we try to get into conformity of the neighborhood, not to pick up anything that was similar or not similar to what was in the neighborhood. As you can see, the vast amount of landscaping as far as on the south of the building, which is on the main part of the building, and on the, I believe that's the east side, I can't see from here, there's a major amount of landscaping which we're not going to remove at all. That building, all the landscaping will be maintained as is. The far as the parking behind the building, that's a alley. There is no landscaping, of course. There was we also went to a lace finish on the stucco, so it would take the distraction from just using smooth stucco, and that lace finish would become a different texture to part of the building or the overall. That's just about it.
Okay, thank you. And I've got two of the other owners here. Maria, does she want to speak? I have Maria Navarro and Marto, I can't pronounce. Please state your name and address.
My name is Maria Navarro, 500 East Lexington Drive, Glendale. I'd like to speak to you on behalf of the homeowners. Many of them experience a lot of trouble with their flooring when the water comes into that wood siding, and we repaired some, and again, so it comes to the point now it's health-wise, because you have mold, it has to be checked, and we got walls that has mold maybe. But we want to have it completely done so that people will feel more comfortable and healthy, because I'm afraid it's getting pretty bad. That's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Marto?
Good evening. I'm Marto Asadorian. I'm a homeowner, and I've been on the board of directors for a couple of decades now in Park Lexington. These are some of the reasons that I jogged down as to why you should have stucco instead of something else. The multifamily buildings in the immediate vicinity of Park Lexington all have stucco exteriors. Why shouldn't Park Lexington? As Maria mentioned, Park Lexington has experienced water intrusion in some units ever since it was built, day one. It is the opinion of experts that we have brought in and looked at the project that replacing the wood siding with stucco would help remedy the water intrusion significantly. Economic considerations. It costs much more, 2 to 3 times more, to replace the existing siding with hardy plank or wood siding than it would cost if stucco is used. Wood siding needs frequent, costly maintenance, not so with stucco. Stucco is impermeable to termites and other insects, an issue that we are dealing with right now. Also, Park Lexington residents should not be obligated to use the same material that was used when Park Lexington was built 25 years ago. That's like holding the current owners of the units obliged to decisions that were made by the original builders of the building a quarter of a century ago. Also, one of the things that I noted in the staff analysis is that, and I quote, materials on a building facade should physically change to create an overall component of color and variety so that the human interest is maintained. Well, I submit to you that we can create that variety by color and texture variation using stucco. We can accomplish that goal if that is one of the main objections. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more cards. I'm going to close the public sector.
My turn, huh?
Your turn.
All right. I mean, I think the applicant is making arguments that are reasonable, and I would ordinarily agree with those arguments. But when I see a building like this, so massive, that already as it is today, in my view, is not necessarily, it lacks some charm. I mean, I just don't find the building, from a design standpoint, outstanding, to say the least. So now you're removing siding, which adds some character, and it does create the sort of modulation that one would want in a building so big. Now you want to make everything stucco. I have a hard time with that. So I'm not convinced. I know there are cost considerations, and I know that the argument was made that most of the buildings in that area have stucco anyway, but some of those buildings were done a long time ago. Some of them might have been mistakes in terms of judgment call of whether they should have been all stucco or not. I don't know that. But I don't want to base my decision on buildings that have been there a long time ago that may not have an aesthetic that's beneficial to the neighborhood. So, we have an opportunity here to either maintain what we have there in terms of the look or enhance it. And if I were to decide, because I'm leaning towards maintaining the siding in some form or another, I would say at least the siding would have to have a contrasting color so that you would have not only a different material but also a variety in texture and color. So I'm just not, the building itself to me, design-wise, is weak. And I have no other way to say it. Call it what it is. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's my point. We have an opportunity now to make the building better, and we're being asked to actually lower the standard. So I'm just curious to know what other board members have to say about it before I make my decision.
Mr. Insua?
Well, it sounds like the problem is a latent defect with respect to waterproof intrusion and not necessarily the wood. There are plenty of homes, and every home actually is, for the most part, is built out of wood. The wood framing. This is a wood framing, and the material that you put on the exterior is not necessarily your barrier of intrusion for moisture. Stucco, improperly applied with improper flashing, improper weep screeds, is going to let water in. It's a waterproofing issue, and if you're getting water intrusion into units, the wood material is not necessarily the culprit. I didn't do the forensic study. I didn't do, but I've seen plenty of projects of this type that have water problems. Number one problem in homeowner association in any home is latent defects of water intrusion. I'm kind of the same with Mr. Aliano, that when you look at this large project, some of the interest that it does have is those different textures of material. And one of the things I think that new construction does poorly is that they tend to use an overabundance of stucco. Whether you color it many colors, it's just stucco is just one of the least, if not the least expensive form of exterior coating that's prevalently used, not because of its aesthetics values necessarily, but because of its relatively low cost. Again, I say the problem is not the wood necessarily, it's the latent defects of how they assembled those different pieces that letting water in. Yet at the same time, I wouldn't want to be a homeowners association trying to maintain your building and have someone like me who doesn't have the whole story telling you what to do. It's hard. We want our thing is to focus on the aesthetics of structures. If they have problems beyond that, we try to be reasonable, but for us, we're the design review board. Aesthetics, how does it look? And I will say that the different materials, like either hardy siding, you can put stone veneer, something that gives you a little bit of play, would enhance the aesthetics of this large complex. So I too am not necessarily all fired up about removing the wood, because you got to remove the wood to find out where the water's coming through, and then coming back in and putting in stucco and repainting it. So I would not be a fan of that. There's my story.
Mr. Yu?
I completely agree with Mr. And so I don't think the issue is, I think we all agree it needs to be replaced. We need to do something with it. Wood, 25 years later, probably hasn't been maintained as well as it could have, because there are tongue and groove pieces that have been around forever, as long as they're, maintained, sanded down every 2-3 years. And it's a high maintenance, product. But to do that, and since it hasn't been done, of course, water will get through whatever leaks there are and get through. And so I think we all agree it needs to be resolved. It needs to be changed out to something. But this is an opportunity. These are places that you own and that you have. And so to be able to improve it so that your value goes up and that the community value goes up is there. I don't think stucco is the answer. I know that you made all those arguments that all the other ones are stucco. But all the other ones also are predominantly 2-story. Some of them have a lot more interesting jogs back and forth. There's a planar change in the patio areas, in the the entrance areas. There's a variation in that. This building is very flat on the sides and in the large sort of facade. The wood, even the wood doesn't do much when you look at it, especially since it's been painted over the same color as the rest of the building. And so see it as an opportunity, whether it's siding, whether it's the hardy siding, which is the cementitious board, and I would argue that it's probably harder than the stucco. Because stucco, you take a bat to it, it's going to chip, it's going to crack. The hardy is not going to go anywhere. It's a product that'll stay. Probably research that if you take a look at it. And so what if you end up with a sawtooth profile? It's more interesting than a flat tongue and groove, wood profile. Add some interest to it. Do something. Tile.
Aluminum
maybe
siding.
not tile, just because
Aluminum siding.
aluminum siding. Some other material. This doesn't convince me and get me all excited about let's make this nicer. And you've also gone back to the Miami Vice pastel 1980s colors. That doesn't bring it to 2011 now. And so I would say take this opportunity, research it, do the work, and bring back something that we can get excited about. So that's what I have.
Mr. Stewart?
There's a large apartment building or condominium project. Don't remember the street, but I'll tell you where it's at. And so you guys will probably tell me you'll know the name of the street. If we're on Glen Oaks and we're driving towards Burbank, there's a 76 gas station, which is always crowded. I think it's between Western and Alameda. But anyway, it's on Glen Oaks with a 76 gas station on the northeast side. You go up that street, and just beyond the gas station, there's a large apartment complex that about 2 years ago did a complete renovation with respect primarily. It's got wood and all that other stuff, which they retained, but they introduced, and exactly you touched upon that, some really interesting color palettes that when I drove up the street, it was like, wow, look how nicely that turned out. And they did it primarily with color. I also have to agree with Mr. Yu that when I look at the colors that are chosen here, it doesn't fire you up. It's kind of like blah. There's nothing exciting about it. And this large apartment or condominium project, which sits on the corner very close to the street on all sides, I think did a really good job with those color choices. So that's a color issue that I want to bring in. Again, we're design review, so color is a thing that we touch upon, especially on large projects that have impact in our communities. But I also want to say, for me, is you have an opportunity to, once you remove that wood, to consider a new material. If hardy siding is not what you want, to really make that thing really look very nicely. And if it isn't stucco, there's metal siding, there's other opportunities that once you put it in there will really do it well for this project. So I'm not excited about replacing it with what you remove with the stucco.
I agree with my colleagues. It's one large box, and it's a flat box. And you've taken numerous windows have been stuccoed over, so you don't even have that change of the fenestration. It's just stuccoed over. The siding is painted the same color. What you're proposing with just all stucco, I don't think is going to help the building at all. In fact, it might even lessen what it looks like. And I agree with the comments regarding the colors. They could be updated, use a different material. And I think just because every other building is stucco in the area does not mean that you downgrade your building to that. So that's my comments. Any other comments?
Can I say something?
We're not, this isn't open for...
There's plenty of stuff out there that they could use. It doesn't have to be hardy plank.
No, there's,
I suggested aluminum siding because they're already preformed, interlocking, flush, standing seam.
we just need to
Whatever
invest-
they want to propose, I think will be better than stucco. And I don't think they will, there's lots of buildings out there that have materials other than stuccos that don't have waterproofing issues. So, like Mr. Ainsworth said, the waterproofing is a separate issue.
But I would also add that, just not to just pick up a material and just apply where it's going, but really study what it's going to look like on the building and where it's going to go, and so it makes sense. So.
Yeah, if they're replacing what's there, it's going to probably go in the same place, but now you have different material, perhaps a different color, maybe bolder colors, like, you suggested.
And maybe those areas where the windows have been stuccoed over, that becomes a flat surface, not that you see different size windows everywhere.
I'm not necessarily sure those windows have been stuccoed over. I think it was probably part of the initial design, although I'm not sure.
No, they're different ones. I'm pretty sure they're windows.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm sorry.
And they're different kinds.
Okay.
They're where windows would have been also. Stephanie, did you have a comment?
Yes, I don't want to interrupt your discussion, but I think that we get a clear sense from the board that there's agreement that there should be use of more than one material, either siding, or there could be, if there's opposition by the applicant to use siding, there are other materials that are optional, and that there should be consideration of where those materials go. There should be a consideration of the window openings that have been revised over the years, as well as the proposed colors. The board should understand that these kinds of material changes are the kinds of things that are typically administratively approved that you don't see. We brought this to you because, and if you looked at the staff report and the conditions of the staff report, staff believed that an all-stucco building in this case would diminish the look of the building, and I think we've heard that also from the board, and that's why we brought it to you. However, obviously, if you feel it needs to come back to you, that is obviously your choice. However, we've heard very clear direction from the board. We would feel very confident that we could work with the applicant and we could talk about the conditions. I just wanted to make sure to put that forward.
You have a comment?
The apartment in question that I mentioned, just as an opportunity to look at something I thought was done well, it appears to be on the corner of 5th and Sonora. 5th and Sonora.
I don't feel like I would need to see it again because I think we're giving clear direction. Because what I've heard from all the board members is that replacing the siding needs to occur with a in-kind or something different than stucco. Whatever they come up with that the staff feels is appropriate, but definitely not stucco. And then we're also saying to use color, even to use a different material, use color to bring that different material to life. So I'm comfortable having staff make the final decision.
I would concur.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I will move for, I guess in this project, where their proposal is to replace with stucco, and I guess we're saying no stucco, so I move that the project, I guess, or in a sense...
what's the proper way of stating it?
It would be approved with conditions, essentially. One thing that we would just want to clarify, in addition to replacing the siding in kind or with a different material other than stucco, and providing a color change that also enhances the look of that change in material. Those two conditions we're clear on. Chair Palmer also mentioned to look at and study the changes in the window and fenestrations over the years. Is that part of the conditions or a consideration? That's something we've only heard from one of the...
I mean, they're going that far. It's a matter of just it's either flat surface or they make it a window again.
Okay, so to make sure to clean up some of the existing changes that have been made over time to the fenestration, to either make them flush so that it's not apparent that it was previously a window, or to replace those with a window.
Right.
Okay, that seems reasonable. Thank you.
Okay. So,
It's closed for a second.
Are you going to get a chance to speak about those?
I'll let you speak in a moment.
okay.
Any other questions?
So I will move for approval with those three conditions that were just discussed.
I don't know if we can vote on it, though, if we're going to open
We
it
can't
up.
vote until I call him back.
Well, then we shouldn't have.
All right, I'm going to open up the public session. If you want to come up and speak, if you could just state your name and address again, please. 2 minutes.
So Dorian, just in regards to those windows, these windows have been part of the building ever since we moved in. Nobody has done anything new to it. You guys have approved it 25 years ago the way it is. Now you're asking us to change it? I find it very unreasonable. Thank you.
Okay. State your name and address, please.
We're talking about the colors of the building, that it looks bland, but what we did is we took the colors that were in the neighborhood of all the surrounding buildings and tried to match it so it blended in with all the other colors. So the serenity of the neighborhood is not some color like some dark green and blue or some crazy colors. And that's why the colors ended up to what they were. It wasn't what we took is we matched colors from across the street, next door, and the neighbors were they weren't opposed to what they were getting some crazy colors on the building, like a dark green or a dark blue or, bold colors, as you would say, which I would call like 2011 colors.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to open this again. Your name and address, please.
Leonardo Davidian again, 500 East Lexington Drive. As Morda Sadurian said, those windows have been there from day one. I think the building had a settlement problem. Then for the structural integrity, they closed those windows, and they left it as is, just to show that there's some kind of difference. Okay. I mean, somebody proposed that you should cover it, make it flat. That's just opposite what you're asking for, to have some kind of variety. That has to be left as is. And plus, another thing, you have to consider the cost. I mean, we have, in these financial times, we have a problem of, income, or I should say, reserve. And we cannot spend millions of dollars here. And stucco was the best choice.
Okay.
And you have to consider that most of the building is already white or whatever color you say it is. And what we propose here is kind of difference. It makes some differences. I mean, shows some variety.
Okay, we understand where
Thank
you're
you.
coming from. Thank you. I have a motion.
Well, it's the window. I'm not as familiar with your issue, but how do you feel about the window?
Well, they're indented and they're like it was a window. It's stuccoed over, and then there might be one down a ways that has a little different frame, and it's the same way. So it's obvious when you walk around at the ground floor that they were windows that were stuccoed over. So I'm just suggesting it be filled in.
Plainer.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable.
No. Anyway, you have a motion
Yeah, the motion will
to
stand.
approve with conditions. Do we have a second?
And it would be reviewed at staff. A second.
Okay, I guess you've heard the condition, or would you like me to go over it again? Over them
No,
again?
we need to vote now.
We're going to vote now.
We're going to vote.
Okay. Then this is roll call. Mr. Aliano,
Yes.
Mr. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Insua,
Yes.
Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
actually, let's approve the minutes first, and then we can discuss, and I can, okay. We have a set of minutes to approve. Do you have any comments?
Questions on the minutes?
I'm not present.
Mr. Aliano was absent. I have no problems with it.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
I move we
I move to approve the minutes.
second that.
I wasn't here, so I don't know if I can second it, can I?
Oh,
It's just us two.
I'll second it. Is that enough people?
You have to pass the...
yeah, well, no, we only have two people that, I'm sorry, we only have two people that can vote on it, because Mr. Aliano and Mr. Insua
We
were
just
gone.
hold it over?
So we have to hold it over. I'm sorry, I didn't notice that.
Okay.
All right, Shelley and I are going to speak with the applicants, and I
Okay.
think we have one more item on the agenda.
Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, Chair Palmer. This was a discussion item that Board Member Sakai on DRB 2 brought up, because particularly with additions, residential additions, where there were substantial additions, a concern that existing landscaping would be torn up. This board, as well as Board 2, has often asked for a landscape plan to be provided, to be reviewed by staff. So what Ms. Sakai had asked for was a discussion to clarify when the board would like to see landscape plans, so that there's a level of predictability for staff and applicants, and also it would be very helpful to us if a landscape plan is appropriate for the board to review it. On each board we have landscape architects, so that's useful to staff. So as we've discussed this within staff, one of the things we want to be clear about is that there are many cases where landscape designs and landscape plans are in fact required, and they are required by a landscape professional. That could be an architect or it could be a landscape contractor. It doesn't have to be a licensed landscape professional. So we'll make sure that if we do recommend that as a condition, the language we use is clear to that effect. But also, we just want to acknowledge that there are many times when landscape designs are provided. They're not always in your packets. That's something that we're trying to make sure that if we do have a landscape plan, it's consistently in your packets. We think we're getting better about it, and we apologize it's not always the case. So we just wanted to be upfront about that. Another thing that's come up as we've been thinking about this since Board Member Sakai raised this issue is that for residential projects, there is a desire by many homeowners to, over time, really provide a creatively inspired garden. Very often, that's a creative outlet for many homeowners, and we don't want to diminish the importance of the creative spirit that people take and the pride that they take in their gardens. So consistently requiring a landscape plan by a landscape professional would remove that from the realm of the homeowner and kind of set it in stone for a number of years with the DRB approval. So we also wanted to be sensitive to that. The board, as it's done tonight for the second story addition, asked only for a landscape plan in the front where it would be seen and the rear would not be seen, so perhaps the city doesn't have a great interest in that. We think if that's a general direction, we can communicate to that to our applicants. So we wanted to open this for discussion, get your advice so that we can have a little bit more clarity in what we ask for applicants, and also provide you the kinds of documents that you would like to see.
Well, I think it's necessary to have a plan in almost every instance where you have a good-sized addition, because as it's constructed, every time I'm on a job, most of the yard is desecrated. And to have the homeowners just say, we're putting in our plants, we're going along, I think that's fine, but this is an opportunity we're in a day and age now where we have to conserve water. We do have a requirement to use drought-tolerant plantings, and I think there are plenty of plants on that palette to be very creative, and we require professionals of some sort to do the building design, and I think having a complementary landscape done by a professional, not necessarily a licensed architect, complements that good architecture that we think we are approving. And I think it's necessary that like in this instance, we asked for the front yard. This was a different kind of a lot. It was a pie-shaped lot. They weren't really doing much work in the back. We have a lot of lots that, if it's just a room addition on one corner, I can understand it. But I think it's a case-by-case basis, so I wouldn't want to give them an impression that they only want to see what's on the front. And I think we really have to concern ourselves with the water conservation. And it's an opportunity, just like the last building we had, it's an opportunity to upgrade things and do a landscape that's going to be acceptable in the future. And I would like to see a plan on every time we have not an addition, but a remodel situation. Just not necessarily done by a licensed landscape architect.
Okay, so did I hear you right? You would like to see a plan with every remodel, the scope of which would be based on the scope of the remodel?
Probably, in most instances.
Okay,
and the landscape plan then would reflect whatever the new remodel is, as opposed to having a landscape that would be outdated in a new house.
Okay, and if the homeowner, because we're really talking about homeowners, suggests that they want to maintain the existing landscaping, one option that the board too raised is to photographically document what's existing and make sure that when we go out there for our final inspection, that it's brought back to that original condition, if you agree that that existing condition is sufficient for the design.
Many of the landscapes that have been done over the years, and by the time you get to remodel, a lot of those landscapes are primarily lawn.
Okay.
It's our objective to reduce that. So even if they would want to keep their landscaping, I think it needs to be documented. I think we need to see what that existing landscape is, but maybe there's a maximum amount or percentage of lawn that would be allowed, so that they're not increasing that as they landscape.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that if a homeowner would like to maintain their existing landscaping, staff will need to see photographs of that and advise them if what we see are thirsty plants. We'll need to advise them that, well, yes, perhaps there's a percentage of lawn that you could keep, but and we can tell them our drought-tolerant requirements and take it from there.
Okay. They do have an opportunity. I mean, there's plenty of plants to pick from, and it's a matter of just educating the public to go in a direction of more drought-tolerant planting.
Okay, and that seems reasonable to staff? Is there agreement on that? Would you like more discussion?
Just for me, for type 5 single-family residences, a homeowner who can skillfully do the drawings, who may not be licensed either and/or professionally trained in drafting or whatever, if they can execute a set of drawings and submit them, and they're done professionally, where you can see what they're doing, that's fine. And I'd like to keep that consistent, not only with the structure, but also with landscaping, because it's consistent with all the cities in the United States. I don't think we should be different. But but I like the level, as Ms. Palmer is saying, of submittal. I think that's more than appropriate. But if they can do it professionally, where it shows what they're doing and they can document it well and it's good, they don't need a license for single-family residences.
No, I agree.
And we're talking primarily remodel, or everything,
Everything.
brand new as well.
Brand new, even
Yeah,
because we have
brand
the option now to ask for a brand-new one with or without a licensed landscape architect. Am I correct?
Yeah, I believe that the code requires a landscape plan for a brand-new home, for all commercial projects and all multifamily residential projects. The code is silent on whether, in additions or remodels, a landscape plan is required, and so really
I'm
that's...
just saying, it doesn't have to be a landscape architect.
Right, doesn't have to be a landscape architect,
request that,
or
but it's
even a landscape professional. Could be a professional-looking plan by the homeowner themselves. Okay,
That's fine.
that gives very clear direction. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not as clear.
Okay.
Because you just said that, by code, commercial projects, when it comes to brand new buildings, you're required
Yes.
a landscape architect.
No, it's always a landscape plan. The code, forgive me, I don't have the exact language of the code in front of me, but it's a professionally done landscape plan, which means that it could be done by an architect, doesn't have to be done by a licensed professional. And the code does not mention licensed landscape architect. There's a different ordinance that's separate from our code that hasn't necessarily been incorporated that calls for a licensed landscape architect, but you'll hear about that another time.
We require a licensed architect to do a building.
Yeah, but
Right.
it's different. See, my understanding was always that when it comes to landscaping, landscape architect is required because you're dealing with water conservation, you're dealing with
Commercial is what I...
commercial, right. For architect,
That's
when it comes to residential, an architect is not required, but for multifamily, commercial, and public buildings, you're required. Yeah, a single-family resident does not require an architect. Because they have engineers. Yes, yeah, I agree. Yes, that's what they do. That's the loophole. But for residential, single-family, because it's a dwelling, it's considered shelter. The code does not require a professional engineer or architect to design it. But my understanding was when it comes to landscape, it's different because now you're dealing with resources, we're dealing with water conservation. So maybe I'm wrong.
I would say that, I sort of agree with Mr. Aliano. On the commercial ones, I think it would be less of a problem for staff reviewing things if you required a licensed landscape architect, because it's not just dealing with one unit.
We will note that. That's not how the code reads. There is a state provision that was adopted fairly recently that staff is. It's actually, and Board Member Palmer, you're probably familiar with this new ordinance. The state has adopted a quote-unquote model water conservation or water efficiency ordinance that city staff has been looking at and researching a simpler way of handling that and adopting that. We're still going through that process, and so we're really not implementing that code. That's a different and separate code. But everywhere in our landscaping section, that refers to a landscape plan, refers to a landscape, a professional to do a landscape plan and not a licensed landscape architect. So we can take that as a notation that you've made that comment and take that under consideration.
Concern, I mean, I can see on a remodel, you don't want to put the burden on a family that's trying to do a little front porch renovation, and now you're asking them to come in and do full-blown professional license drawings, done by a professional or licensed landscape architect. when it comes to new projects.
But we're not asking them to do that. Now you're confusing me.
Well, maybe I'm still confused.
I thought we decided, or
Not
agreed,
confused, I just go.
We're not
I thought we
asking.
agreed that we're not asking for that where remodels, small family.
Correct, yeah.
We
so-
adjourn this side of the table.
Yeah, no, so what I'm saying is I don't want to lower the standard for other projects that are much greater in scale.
And I'm agreeing with that.
Right.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Are we all
I move to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Take care, guys.
You guys wanted to get out of here.